Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, October 29th. It is 6:03. This is the Budget and Public Employees Committee. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Saunier. Vice Chair Browning.
Present.
Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderman Devoti.
Present.
President Green. Chair Aldridge.
Present.
Alderwoman Saunier. Alderwoman Velazquez. We have 4 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you for that, Madam Clerk. With 4 being present, we have established a quorum. Next order of business will be approval of the minutes. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from Wednesday, September 25th, 2025.
So moved. Second.
It was moved by the Alderman from the 5th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Saunier. Vice Chair Browning.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderman Devoti. President Green.
Aye.
Chair Aldridge.
Aye.
Alderwoman Saunier. Alderwoman Velazquez. We have 4 aye votes.
Thank you with that. Thank you for that, Madam Clerk. With that, we have approved the minutes from Wednesday, September 25th, 2025. Item number 4 is board bills for review. We do not have any. Item number 4 is board bill. Item number 5 is resolutions for review. We do not have any. And item number 6 is committee discussion. Discussion item number 1 will be the tornado relief conversation, which today we have representatives from the Recovery Office, as well as representatives from the Comptroller Office, and we have the President herself. Before we get started, again, I want to thank everybody for coming today. If you'd like to testify, there's a sign-up sheet in the front. The reasons of having these monthly meetings is a few months ago, the Board of Aldermen passed a board bill that allocated $30 million of interest money to go to the tornado. One of the caveats that was in that legislation that was added to the bill by Vice Chair Browning was to hold public hearings on the expenditures of RAMS money to ensure that there is transparency, but at the same time so that the community can know how those dollars are being used, especially in such a devastation of the tornado. This is our 3rd meeting, and really want to focus with this meeting of having all the representatives from the Recovery Office, which the mayor is one of the members of ENA, the representative from the Comptroller Office, which the Comptroller is a member of ENA, as well as the President. A lot of those decisions when it comes to funding start with ENA. There is a process where the Comptroller has some process in that once those dollars are allocated. And I think as we get into winter, and there's been several months since those funds have been appropriated, it would be good to get a holistic approach of what has been spent, what has been allocated, what contracts are still being waited on. So with that, to be respectful of everybody's time, I will jump right in and have Mr. Jim from the Recovery Office come up and do a presentation, followed by somebody from the Comptroller's Office, and then President Green. And everyone that speaks, please state your first and last name, just for the record. My name is Jim Hill. Can you turn your mic on, Mr. Jim? Yep, there's a little button. You just click that. If you want to hold it, that's up to you too.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jim Hill, and I am the Chief Cost Recovery Officer, and I'm a member of the Recovery Office inside the mayor. And thank you for the opportunity to meet with the BOA Budget and Public Employee Committee for this update. All right. Okay, here's the agenda, and just for a reminder, the focus of this forum is on the Recovery Office funding and transparency updates. So it's how the money is being spent across the recovery effort. That's RAMS money, other funds that we have. A deep dive into the status of the RAMS funds or the Recovery Office funds. Actions to date that we've taken along with the Comptroller's Office and the Board of Aldermen to improve the speed of procurement and deploying these funds, and then funding priorities for the next month. Unfortunately, in my role, I'm not the mission or programmatic leader, so updates around winter shelters and housing, demolition and debris removal, home stabilization repair, that's not where I spend my time. I do have 2 people with me, Adam Pearson, who is the the task force lead for the resident and community services within the recovery office, and Dylan Holloman, who is the housing lead, housing task force lead within the recovery office. Quick reminder of where we are. The respond phase is over, so all the emergency declarations, immediate safety, basic infrastructure restoration is finished. We're focused now on restore, which is housing, demo and debris removal, and resident supports. And we have just recently launched neighborhood visioning and strategy with neighborhood task forces that are being formed. The four core areas of focus are around maximizing available immediate housing and shelter, eliminating debris, demolishing unsafe structures, and repairing infrastructure, establishing resident support systems, and launching formal community engagement, because the community is going to be critical to a successful recovery. While the focus of this discussion will be on the RAMS fund, I wanted to highlight the different funds that have been deployed by the city in response to the tornado. First of all, we've spent about $30 million in just responding, which is the emergency response, so police, fire, EOC, replacing traffic signals, street lights, et cetera. And then we've spent about $19 million on debris removal so far, with a lot more to go. With Noel's help, we've been able to free up about $37 million of ARPA, CDBG, CDBG-DR, HUD, MSD, and other funds that will be focused primarily on housing, but also on some debris removal. And then, of course, we have the RAM settlement interest, which the focus there is housing and resident support. There's also an additional, so far we've spent or allocated about $95 million. And then there's $180 million estimated that will come from FEMA and the state for the private property debris removal. And then we have $100 million from Missouri Senate Bill 1 that will fund private property debris removal that is not eligible for FEMA reimbursement. A quick cost recovery update. So this is the work that we have people doing as we're spending the money, and making sure that we're spending it on the right things in the right ways, and have the documentation to support reimbursement from FEMA. We are on track to have about $18 million of reimbursement submitted by the end of November. There's $13 million in so far. There'll be another $5 that will come in November, and we got our first payment from the state of Missouri, which disperses the funds. It was a small amount, but exciting nonetheless on yesterday. And then we'll continue these efforts to support reimbursement of all the funds the city is dispersing on the tornado recovery. This is a slide that the recovery office has showed consistently throughout in terms of where the RAMS money has been allocated. So the bulk of it is on resident support, $12.5 million across services and resource hubs, $10.5 million on housing, and then $5 million on debris, and then $1.065 million on the recovery office, the administrative aspects of administering these programs. Okay, and here's where we are in terms of, so there's the $30 million that's committed by priority area. We have awarded contracts totaling $23.65 million. Many of them are in the process of being executed still, but in terms of going through the process of creating an RFP, forming a selection committee, meeting with bidder, collecting bids, meeting with bidders, selecting a winning bid, and then going through the special leading A process to award the contract, we have completed almost $24 million of that. So there's another $6 million to go. And there are several RFPs and NOFAs that will run its course in the next week or so. And there's some funds that'll be available for other needs. So we've got a NOFA that closes on Friday for winter warming shelters. We have an RFP for home repair construction management that was issued today. that will close on November 10th. And that is bringing outside expert support that have done this kind of work to really accelerate the home repair program. And then we have the ANOFA that closes Friday for additional vacant unit turns, about $1.25 million. In terms of progress towards spending, within the resident support programs, of the amount, the $12.5 million that were allocated there, we awarded $9.5 million of that to the United Way to administer the grant process and award the funds. So that has been ongoing for a little while. The first area that is furthest along is the nonprofit support grants. And we have, in the last couple of weeks, the United Way has paid out $1.4 million in grants to about 28 nonprofits. And the nonprofits that received those grants are listed in Exhibit 2. There's 9 more applications to be evaluated on Friday that has requested $700,000, and we expect to issue much of that as well. We allocated $3.5 million for this work. We expect that at the end of the day, we will not allocate all of it for nonprofit operating grants, and that we will reallocate some of that to other needs. The first of which would be disaster case management. So the disaster case management has been set up. We awarded that work to four agencies very experienced in this work: Catholic Charities, Salvation Army, LifeWise, and Hope. The plan is that they would provide 24 FTEs at a cost of $2.4 million. So we didn't have quite that much allocated. So the plan is to reallocate a portion of the nonprofit support grants to this. We have hired, there have been 10 disaster case managers that have been hired so far. We've had a couple rounds of training, and those 10 have active caseloads and are working with tornado victims today. We have three other available sources of funds that we've received all the applications, and Adam and the United Way team and Christine from the Board of Aldermen will be meeting with the United Way on Friday. The plan is to approve and allocate those funds and get those funds dispersed next week. And all of these funds will be available for the disaster case managers deployed to the people that they are serving. As I mentioned earlier, in terms of heating, we have a NOFA that closes on Friday for winter warming shelters. And so we will get those awarded in short order, and a couple areas that we have not spent the money that we'll be able to reallocate, and that is $500,000 for that was initially intended for nonprofits to distribute utility aid, but that has been taken over through the contract with Diamond Divas, so we're able to redeploy that money. The next area is the disaster resource hubs, and we've got a stopgap resource hub that the contract is in process of finalized that will take us through the end of November. And then there's a longer-term strategy that Adam and team are working on to set up those resource hubs for at least the next year or so. And then, as I mentioned, on the procurement and distribution of supplies, a contract was executed with Diamond Divas to manage the warehouse, the tornado supplies warehouse. And so that is in place. And then in terms of housing, we've got a couple of, the Healthy Home Repair has been awarded. It's being administered through CDA. Progress is happening there. We've had 4 homes that have been completely repaired and another 22 that are in process today. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a proposal for home repair construction management for $2.95 million. Those proposals will come in on November 10th. That will be awarded, and that'll provide the construction management to accelerate the deployment of those funds, with the idea is that we would hopefully be able to repair 60 to 80 homes with those funds. We've awarded $2.75 million of vacant unit turns to turn 219 vacant units into available housing. That the contracts are being finalized there. and that work will be starting soon. And then we've got a NOFA that will close on Friday for an additional $1.25 million in vacant unit turns. We have selected Forward to administer a deposit and rental assistance program, the amount of $1 million. The program design is being finalized, and that will be launching in the next couple of weeks. And then we've already awarded $500,000 to the Red Cross for resident transition services from non-congregate sheltering into more intermediate permanent housing. In terms of debris removal, we have selected Tetra Tech to administer the rights of entry, hazardous structural assessment, structural inspections, and cost estimates. This is the first critical step in the private property debris removal. And so we launched that on the 15th. An outreach center has been set up in Urban League on Natural Bridge. That opened last week. We've already received 450 applications through the end of the day yesterday for to start the right of entry process, the first step of which will be title search. Then we got another $350,000 that we're using to fund AmeriCorps, who are doing debris removal on their own, and also dumpsters and other supplies that community-led debris removal efforts need to be able to complete their work. And then finally, we've got the recovery office staffing and the Tetra Tech contract for cost recovery consulting. Tetra Tech started about a month and a half ago, and making good progress and getting costs submitted so we can accelerate reimbursement. Okay, so there's been a lot of learnings, and as you guys know, I joined the city a couple months ago and so it's been a real learning for me, just in terms of how to get things done. But I've identified barriers, and most importantly, we've taken some actions to accelerate procurement and deployment of these funds. First of all, on the grant management side, as I mentioned, United Way on the resident community services, we have outsourced the grant management so they can move it, they can get it done a lot faster than we can do. We just don't have the resources or expertise to do that. And so we're using them for additional capacity. There's a very structured, rigorous process for RFP selection, EMA approval, and to be able to get out ahead of that, we have scheduled well in advance selection committee for the recovery office and special ENAs that happen once or twice a month, and those will be scheduled through March of 2026 at this point. There's been, the contracting has admittedly been slow, and a lot of that some of that falls on the recovery office, and we have a weekly update with all the right parties in the room to talk about where contracts are, where they're being held up, and what do we need to do on. So hopefully that will help a lot. The Comptroller's Office is implementing an Oracle contracting module that'll automate the workflow, which will help a ton too. We won't have to walk the halls with paper documents, looking for signatures. We'll be able to, that'll automate that workflow, and we'll also be able to know wherever a contract is at a point in time. And there's the pilot is launching in a couple of weeks, and hope to have that at our disposal very soon. And then we've had a lot of discussions, and I know Alderwoman Saunier, Julian has spoken with you about potential ordinance changes and things to make doing things easier as much as we can. So that's something that the recovery office is very focused on as well, and including collecting opportunities to make things move faster. So in terms of priorities over the next month, continue to get these funds deployed. We know it's slower than people want. We've got to get these out there. A couple of things that we will be focused on is the United Way allocations will run their course. We'll know how much money is left over and available to deploy to other United Way needs like disaster case management, hunger, legal support, whatever the most pressing needs are. And then we've got a handful of these NOFAs and RFPs that I mentioned, the warming centers, the home repair construction management, and the vacant unit turns. So all in all, lots of progress. I know it doesn't feel like that for those that are impacted, but the recovery office is working as hard as we can to get these funds deployed in the right manner and on the right things. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jim. So that we don't, committee members may forget and we don't go to each department and they forget, I'm just going to go in order. With seniority of questions that folks may have for you in the recovery office, starting with Vice Chair Browning.
I'm going to wait until heard from the public, if that's all right.
Okay.
Alderman Devoti.
Yes, so Mr. Hill. My apologies. Mr. Hill, we talked, or obviously you have in hand a set of priorities. As we look at where funds are, what's been allocated, what is out the door, what is yet to be contracted, what are the priorities remaining from your viewpoint in the recovery office?
Well, for sure it's housing and unmet citizen needs and shelters and warming centers to get through the upcoming winter months. But housing and home repairs is the overwhelming priority. Adam, anything? Okay.
So certainly with respect to home repairs, I know that one of the items you mentioned, there is money to be allocated and to be contracted. This past week, Mr. Nix came down to the 5th Ward and gave a extremely educational presentation. My understanding is it was the first time he's ventured outside of the tornado zone to give his talk. With respect to where we stand on funds, what can we hope to accomplish with respect to housing needs, including intermediate housing needs with the funds that are still not allocated or contracted? Not much, right?
Right. There's just, yeah.
So, and in fact, I saw with respect to your home repairs, I mean, we've got 4 houses done, we've got 22 in the works, we've got 2.95 million that you're hoping to repair 60 to 80 houses. As we are moving toward the end of this $30 million allocation, what is, I mean, I would assume we're going to need to talk about what's next.
Yeah.
What's next from both a priority level as well as when you're looking at your crystal ball, what funds are going to be needed to at least give a real shot at meeting those priorities?
Well, and that's not something that I've been focused on, Alderman Devoti, but I know that it's a huge focus for Julian Nix, the mayor, Casey, but we need significantly more funds than we have available.
And I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Oh. Come on up, Dylan.
But I guess I am putting you on the spot. So your presentation here today is essentially where we at today and what the plans are for those remaining funds to be contracted, allocated, and moved out the door. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
So that's the scope. Okay. Okay, then I don't have any other questions.
Alderwoman Tanya.
Thank you. Just in the interest of public comment, I'm going to hold my questions so that we can get to the community,
Okay.
but I certainly do have some.
Okay.
Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here today. Most of my questions will probably come after public comment too, but sort of piggybacking off of Alderman Devoti, do we have an understanding at all of what the total gap is in debris removal in terms of funding that we're getting from state and federal, some local that we've done versus what the actual need is going to be?
We don't know yet for sure, President Green. We will know a lot more as the ROE process goes on, but I will say that as our debris removal task force team, led by Laura Gann, have looked at what they think the needs are between the federal and state money, they're going to take over all the eligible private property, the $100 million from the state of Missouri, and the recovery of the funds that the funds that are eligible for the FEMA public assistance match. We think there's probably about, that we think we'll be okay. We think the total debris removal cost might be, including demos, $350 to $380 million.
Okay. And we've gotten from this 450 applications for debris removal so far. Do we have a sense of the cost of doing just those 450 yet?
No, we will soon.
Okay.
We have the intake center, and they're going to start. They'll do the title search first, and once they have a clear title and they have clear right of entry, then they will send the hazard assessment team and the inspectors out, and they will come up with an estimate.
Okay, great. And then it looks like with the money that we've allocated thus far, we have enough funds to do about 100 repairs to homes. Do we have a sense of, obviously 100 is not nearly enough. Do we have a sense of the actual scope of how many homes are needing repair if we were to actually fund this at a higher level?
We know from FEMA
Can you
data.
please state your first and your name of your department?
My name is Noel Pfeffer. I lead the city's Community Development Administration. We know from FEMA data that there are thousands of uninhabitable homes. And combining this with MoSafe assessment data conducted by the Building Division, we estimate conservatively around 5,000 homes that need significant major home repairs. Perhaps, if I had to say, averaging around 40 to 50,000.
Okay, and are those all homes that were occupied pre-tornado?
Not all, but the number of 5,000 is of impacted homes occupied before the tornado, yes.
Wow, okay, that's a huge gap.
Yeah, I shared with the HUD's committee some time ago an overall assessment of the need and the gap as being, I mean, this is a $1 to $2 billion disaster. And so the true need, recognizing that it's in excess of our available resources, is for home repair in excess of $250 million, and for housing more broadly in excess of $500 million.
Okay, and so given that we're only able to do a very small fraction right now of what the need is, how are those dollars being prioritized for who gets those home repair funds?
So the truth is that home repair, practically speaking, is not a short-term solution for the vast majority of impacted families. The shorter-term solution for the thousands of families still living in uninhabitable homes as we approach winter is a combination of rental assistance, vacant unit turns, shelter, and emergency housing.
Great. And that actually brings me to my final question, which I think is for Director Pearson. Of, as we go into these winter months, do we have an idea of the scope of people that we are anticipating maybe unhoused or needing shelter space as weather gets colder and folks can no longer stay in homes that are maybe only partially standing?
Yes, so Jim mentioned in part of his presentation the Tetra Tech team that is working the recovery office to help do some coordination and some planning. There's been some conversations with the Tetra Tech team to do some evaluation of what the exact need is in the community for the people who would need to come out of their homes during the winter months when it drops below 32 or 25 degrees, whatever it may be, and get a better understanding of what all the needs. We know, based on what Noel Pfeffer with the CDA was saying, based on some of the FEMA data about the damaged properties, there are approximately 5,000 households that are living in really damaged properties that may not be able to maintain heat during the winter because of roof damage or window damage, whatever it may be. And so we're thinking that there's going to be a pretty large need for emergency shelter. I'm not able to quantify it at this point because a lot of people are staying with family, staying with friends. Maybe the insurance is paying for a hotel stay. I think some of them have rental assistance with FEMA, continued rental assistance with FEMA. And so some people are helping to resolve short-term their own housing instability. but we'll know a little bit more about the specific numbers of who's going to need that emergency shelter or non-congregate shelter through the winter, I would say over the next few weeks or so. But what my understanding is that we need to prep for hundreds of folks, if not more than 1,000, to seek emergency shelter throughout the window for the pre-disaster affected families. Sorry, post-disaster affected.
And that's to kind of talk pre-disaster, and that's on top of already existing unhoused population that I think I last saw was around 500 unsheltered.
Yeah, so typically the city funds like a baseline number of shelter beds. I think this year it's around 400 emergency shelter beds. What we need in collaboration with the Continuum of Care, we've been having a lot of conversations, is around 500 additional shelter beds to meet the need for the individuals who were unsheltered during the point in time count in the winter of last year. And an additional 500 shelter beds would help to close that gap a bit. And then you're exactly correct. After that, we still have to work with the post-disaster unhoused or housing instability, unstable population.
Which could be 1,000.
Potentially.
Okay. All right, that's all of my questions. Thank you.
And I don't know if we caught, Director, if you just state your first and name.
Sure, apologies. Adam Pearson, Director of the Department of Human Services.
Got you. I just got a few questions, and then we go on to the Comptroller's office. After, so 23.6 million has what it says has been contracted or in deployment, which I think earlier you talked about how some of those have been approved through ENA and contract, and glad to hear that the Comptroller is working on a system, and also maybe Alderwoman Sonia legislation to move that quicker. How much out of that 26.6 is actually just not in contract or deployment, but like is spent?
There's 3 to 4 million has been spent of these contracted amounts.
Okay, so
And
out of the 26.6 million, only 4 million is actually spent out the door to community groups or to home repair, any of that, only 4 million?
Correct.
Okay. Going back to home repair real quick, and maybe this is a CDA question. I know as we enter the cold weather, I'm not a construction person, but it's probably hard to rebuild homes when, it's cold and it's snowing. It says 4 have been repaired. Where in 22 homes are being repaired? Are those 22 being repaired as we speak, that they will be done in the next few weeks?
The objective is to have all of those homes and the 2 million spent down in full by the end of the year.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
By the end of the year, in the next 2 months.
Okay, you said spent by the end of the year, so are the 22 homes being repaired at this moment?
At least, I believe, 9 of them are.
Okay, so 4 homes have been repaired, 9 are being repaired, which is not 22 currently homes are actually being repaired at this moment.
I want to clarify that what we're speaking about now is just the 2 million in RAMS funds. We've also allocated an additional 3 million in CDBG funds, and an additional half dozen or so tornado impacted homes have been impacted through our ordinary day-to-day home repair program. And then we do also have an emergency stabilization program that has completed 20 homes to date in partnership with the building division. But those are very basic tarp boards. The truth is, as you point out, is that it has been slow. To give you an idea of the timeline, of course, the tornado impacted on May 16th. The $30 million in RAMS interest were allocated and appropriated, I believe, in mid-June. Then the 2 million in home repair, RAMS home repair funds were allocated to CDA in August. We contracted with Mission St. Louis, and then we have to go through a process where we contract with each individual homeowner and collect a variety of information, including right of entries, agreements between the homeowner and the contractor, homeowner and Mission St. Louis. And so the machinery of city government is such where when the Board of Aldermen makes an investment, it's going to take a few months for that to translate into impact on the ground. And I would encourage you all to bear that in mind as we speak to the need that's coming up in the winter.
Got you. And I appreciate you, Director, for providing a little bit of that background. But just as the documents that we receive, and I know is going out to the public, going back to that 2.5 million, and you have a lot of pots from CDA where you do home repair and housing, but out of the 2.5 million, currently 4 has been or being repaired, and you hope to use the rest of it to repair the other ones, I'm assuming ideally in winter, but that may be difficult.
No, certainly the goal is to complete all the exterior work in the coming month and then do interior work. So these are comprehensive is too strong a word, but these are major home repairs designed to repair the tornado damage. So new roofs, HVAC, et cetera. So these do take time. We are simultaneously have stood up a emergency stabilization program, which is moving a lot faster and doing more homes more quickly. But the truth of the matter is that those homes may not necessarily be fully winterized because we may be able to tarp and board them. And again, 20 of those have been done, and we anticipate another 200 complete by the end of the year. But those homes will not necessarily have HVAC, may not be weatherized. So the truth of the matter is that home repair is a long-term recovery program. We need to invest, or in order to help the thousands of impacted families stay in their homes long-term, we would need to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into home repair. But the city's home repair program historically spent about $2 million a year on 100 homes a year. We scaled that over the last few years to, we spent last year about $6 million on 300 homes. We can scale that even further, and that's what we're doing in part by issuing this RFP to bring in a big national partner, and we can scale further. But even in the best of circumstances, there's no world in which we can do hundreds of millions of dollars of repairs in less than 2 to 3 years. And so that's a long-term recovery play. It's not a winter, and it's necessary, but it's not a winter shelter.
When we talk about the home repair, is there like how I know home already exists in CA. I know typically residents have said it takes forever to get just home repair before the tornado. Now we are post-tornado, how are you prioritizing who is getting kind of the home repair? Is it from what happened post-tornado?
So we've created a new tornado recovery intake process and wait list. And so we aren't requiring folks who are impacted by the tornado to wait behind the over 1,000 folks on our wait list around the city already. Again, there was a crisis before the crisis here with respect to extraordinary home repair needs. But we are working to scale the program as quickly as possible. But there's a limit to what is possible. I will say, in addition, that of the $5 million allocated of RAMS funds towards home repair, only $2 million has been kind of authorized for CDA to allocate towards specific households to this point. The other $3 million is being RFP'd for this big national partner. And
Gotcha.
so,
and I appreciate you brought that up because I want to, usually we do go with the audience or people in attendance, but I just want to ask some questions that may actually give maybe people in attendance more information on what's going on from direct questions. Speaking of that so 2.5 went to CDA. We have 2.95 million that is a proposal date of 11/10. So that RFP has not went out for the additional 2.9 million to start, noting that the process is long through E&A contracts. That hasn't even started, and that is to start in November 10th of next.
if I may, in the interest of transparency, our preference at CDA was to run those funds through our existing home repair contract with Mission St. Louis. Frankly, bringing on a big national contractor for $3 million in home repair is overkill. We can absorb that with our current construction management capacity. However, in the case that we do anticipate a large allocation of over 10 million or 20 million, or ideally $50 million in funds towards home repair, then it absolutely does make sense to RFP for a big construction management partner. And we want to do that now before, so that we can hit the ground running after winter and with that appropriation. But frankly, our preference would have been to allocate the full $5 million to home repair immediately. But that allocation was not made.
And maybe that's also a Jim question because I'm trying to figure out what was the thought of doing 2.5 to Mission St. Louis, and then now we're waiting, that has not went out yet, to do 2.95 million to go out for somebody to bid on it, which that will take 30 days or 10 days, whatever. It takes some time instead of at once doing the whole 5 million for home repair to start getting that money out the door. As it's getting out the door, Mission St. Louis, we're holding up progress by waiting to do it instead of just doing it in one whop.
And I was not part of that decision, so I can't answer that.
Gotcha.
I did want to clarify the RFP. So the RFP went out yesterday. Proposals are due the 10th, and we plan to go to the ENA meeting on the regular ENA meeting as a tornado item. I think it's the 19th or.
Gotcha. And that's my misfault. Yes, it said proposals are due on the 10th, and then it then has to go through ENA. Then from ENA, if I'm not mistaken, it has to be signed by the comptroller, which will still take some time. All of it knowing that how antiquated city government is, it probably would have been great to do it in, again, one whop of the whole 5 million. Whoever, I guess, since Mr. Julian Nix is not here, and I know there is a representative from the mayor's office, hopefully we can get that answer of why that happened, just for clarity. And then one other quick question, and then I think Alderwoman Sonia had a question. I noticed on some of these charts that there is, more money, ideally, thinking that there would be needed legal support. 2 applications received totaling 1.5 million, but you guys only have 0.75 for that fund. Home relief, 16 applications receiving a total or totaling 4.3 million, but there's only $500,000 in that fund. Mental health, 12 applications totaling 2 million, but there's only 0.2 million in that fund. I guess is the goal that maybe, as Mr. Jim mentioned earlier, that maybe all the funds from the non-for-profits won't go through and you'll move money around and then these different pots?
Yeah, so that is a good question, Alderman. So what we were thinking for these particular buckets, legal services, mental health supports, hunger relief, these are programmatic areas that we did want to focus on, like outside of the disaster case management, areas that could be paired with disaster case management, paired with some of the resource hubs or resiliency centers that will be set up in the community. The feedback that we got from FEMA partners, folks who have been doing some home repair, is that to resolve some of the home repair issues, resolve some of the debris issues and getting access to people's property, there had to be some sort of concerted effort to solve some of the legal issues related to housing ownership or heirship properties, the deed when it comes to who actually owns the properties, because I think that affects the rate at which some of these repairs are supposed to be made. And so the decision was made to put a little bit more money into the legal services just because people are going to be managing FEMA money, managing state money. They'll need to get their homes repaired, and some of these issues will need to resolve. And so that is going to take a little bit more money. Hunger assistance, the city has partnered with a number of food organizations in the past and remains strong partners with a number of distribution organizations. Recently, with sort of these national conversations regarding SNAP benefits and the federal government not pursuing funding SNAP benefits after the 1st of November, there's been some conversation about allocating some money towards hunger assistance above and beyond the levels that we're currently at. I think it just depends on how much of a balance we have left over with the nonprofit assistance money. But all of that, we still need to support disaster case management, right? We still have to get people back on their feet, back in their homes, assist them with managing the FEMA money, the state money, any city money that they get. And I think disaster case management is going to help with some of that as well. So there are a lot of different needs across a lot of different categories. Obviously, the funding is finite. And so where we can move funds around, depending on what people's needs are, we would like to do so. And that's what we presented in the PowerPoint today.
Gotcha. Thank you, Director. And then last question for probably Mr. Jim. Earlier, you stated the money it's been slow, and you said that only 4 million at this moment out of the 30 is gone. And as I'm reading some of the barriers, I guess what would you contribute to it being slow and only getting 4 million out? Or out, and to be clear, there are funds being deployed through contracts, but the 4 million that's actually money is gone, what would you add to that slowness?
Part of the spend too is there's a lag. So there's a lag between we select someone, then we go to an E&A, and then the contracting process, and we're going to accelerate this, but it takes 30 to 60 days from E&A to get an executed contract, which is not the way it should be. And part of that falls to the recovery office and me. But then once people start working, there's a lag by which point they invoice and you pay them, and that may add another 30 or 60 days. So we should have a significant amount of funds deployed in the next year.
Gotcha. Alderwoman Tanya.
Thank you, Chairman. A majority of my questions are around the vacant unit turns. So I know a lot of that lives in CDA. I'm just really curious because I'm really fascinated in that process and think that's really needed. I know one of the things that I had heard or challenges that were happening is that some of the nonprofits have kind of funding challenges when it comes to the vacant unit turns because some of them are past due, like maybe they're past due on taxes or having a number of other financial struggles since COVID, since the tornado. And so I'm just curious, are they disqualified from, if you are a nonprofit that's trying to get involved in this, but you might have some of those issues that I mentioned, are you disqualified from this process?
Unfortunately, as a general rule, if you are behind on your taxes, you will not be able to contract with the city of St. Louis. It's not just about our process, it's actually a city ordinance where before the city contracts with any party, they have to be cleared to ensure that they are current on their taxes and current on their business license. So unfortunately, that is a rule currently under city law. However, I can share that the response to our vacant unit turns notice of funding availability has been overwhelming in a good way. I want to clarify for the record that the slides actually have a small scrivener's error on them. It's actually 2.5 million, not 1.25 million. That is being made available through that notice of funding availability. And 1.5 million has been committed already towards vacant unit turns at Fox Manor, at Homer G. Phillips, at Parkview Apartments with the Housing Authority, and in partnership with RISE. And actually, and Murphy Park. And those total about 200. And I can also share that even though those RAMS funds, those dollars, have not gone out the door yet, so they don't show up in the 4 million, repairs are in fact underway at Homer G. Phillips and Fox Manor and Murphy Park. And the reason for that is the way that we're structuring this vacant unit turns program, recognizing the constraints on city contracting and the fact that it will lag a few months from award, is that we're providing award letters that these partners can then go out and capitalize and start drawing the funds down and spending their own money or getting a loan, a low interest loan, and spending that money to turn the vacant units, and then we will reimburse them. And so there are some steps that we can take strategically to accept the fact that city money moves slowly, but empower our partners in the private sector to take action. And we're looking forward to making more awards very soon. We've had over 100 folks sign up to apply for the 2.5 million. I am not worried about not having enough applications. We've already had 18 submitted. We expect a lot more by the deadline on the 31st. And we'll be awarding those on a rolling basis. And the last thing I'll note is that we did have, through ARPA, a neighborhood transformation grants program that included funding for proactive development and capacity building. And through that program, we were actually able to help a few CDCs pay off their back taxes, where they were not in full default yet, but they had arrears. We were able to support that. And so investing in our CDCs and investing in our nonprofit developers is essential to building the ecosystem that's going to ultimately drive housing recovery.
So you mentioned that it was city ordinance that was the reason why you couldn't move forward on that. Obviously, I did Tada, so I'm a fan of folks paying their taxes, but I guess my concern as we continue to do this program, which seems amazing, is that taxes are due again at the end of this year, right? And I would imagine that folks in those tornado impacted areas, various nonprofits, other organizations, if you've suffered a tornado, you probably will suffer on, paying taxes. So I wonder if, especially if it's city ordinance, if that might be worth us revisiting to figure out if there's a way that we can make it so that if you're having a barrier that is, if you're a nonprofit and you're having a barrier that might be due to specific financial challenges from the tornado, or they're not in the tornado impact area, but I know I've had plenty of conversations with DeSales, which is a community development corporation that does a lot of affordable housing in the 7th. But I wonder if it might be worth us revisiting that conversation in that ordinance, because my fear is that, especially in those impacted areas, when this next tax bill rolls out, okay, now they're disqualified from having, vacant turnovers happening.
That certainly makes a lot of sense. I couldn't agree more that building in some sort of exemption or waiver process makes a lot of sense. While you're at it, you might also look at the business license requirement. Currently says that they need to have business license clearance within 30 days. Business licenses are typically granted for a period of a year. So extending that, because what often happens is that we will route a contract that has clearance from the license collector, but by the time that contract arrives in the comptroller's office, that business license will expire, and so it'll get kicked back to the department. And so that's another place where I think some reform may be helpful. And finally, there's many, but expanding the eligible uses of Prop NS funds to help drive recovery efforts would also be a helpful amendment to current city law.
Thank you. And then as far as the vacant turnovers expanding, I know that it used to be just for nonprofits. Now it does include for-profits. Is the eligibility criteria the same around that, or are there more stringent guidelines to protect, against honestly slumlords or those who might be looking to exploit the community?
We always have quality standards as part of our awards, and a 5-year compliance period is attached to these awards, requiring them to keep the properties in safe, sanitary, and habitable standards. On top of that, I'll note that they are required to make the units available at an affordable rate. So it's not just for-profit market rate units.
Okay, and do you have any plans to increase the vacant unit cap? I know there's sometimes struggles with finding qualifying units through the RFP process. Are you talking about increasing the vacant unit cap, or any other ideas you might have to deal with? I know there was just a struggle of finding qualifying units to do the RFP process.
So we're currently at a cap of 10,000, and based on the applications that we're receiving, I think we will have enough qualifying units to fully spend down that 2.5 million. If additional funds are allocated, that's certainly something we can look at, but also a larger unit cap means slower repairs as well, with more major repairs. The last thing I really want to emphasize for this committee's understanding is that vacant unit turns alone are not going to rehouse folks.
Right.
Because the median rents in these impacted neighborhoods were closer to 500, right? And so that means that vacant unit turns only make sense as part of a strategy with rental assistance. And the 1 million that has been allocated to rental assistance today may be sufficient to help 100, maybe a little more. It's nowhere near sufficient to meet the extraordinary need.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And I just wanted to confirm the units that you have that are activated, like that have actually been activated from the vacant turnover program, expected, especially since we're coming into colder seasons.
Yes, so the ones where repairs are currently underway are Fox Manor, Murphy Park, and Homer G. Phillips. We actually also had an ARPA-funded vacant.
So they're underway. Underway means they're going to be ready by the time winter comes. What does underway mean?
Certainly, yes. In fact, that's a basic condition of the program as a whole. The goal is to have these units open and available for lease by December 31st.
Thank you.
President Green.
Apologies, I have made me have a couple more questions for Noel. First, kind of one more question on those vacant unit turns. When we are doing those, are we capping then the amount that they can charge in rent?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. And what is that cap?
I believe it's set at 60% of an affordable rent for individuals under 60% of area median income.
Okay, so if we're doing rental assistance, it's then to support units that are at that 60% AMI or less.
I can't speak to the design of the rental assistance program as it's still in progress, but that would make sense. Dylan,
Okay.
is that something you want to speak to?
Yeah, no, we are currently, excuse me, Dylan Holliam. I help co-lead the task force for the housing restoration and repair. That is, we are actually looking at a 50% threshold to support rental assistance for impacted residents. And if I may, I would love to clear up another question. I don't, if that's okay, I would love to clarify Alderman Aldridge's concern around the home repair and why we chose to go a route for the national partners.
For the record, could you state your name and department? I'm sorry.
Dylan Holliam, SLDC, co-lead the housing restoration and repair. The reason we did that is really for capacity. We understand that there is limited capacity in what we could do right now, and we understand that these larger firms have disaster recovery experience. They also have bonding capabilities to be able to pay contractors quickly and more efficiently so that we can continue to do the work. Although this is a pilot to do those 80 homes, we do understand that with this, we do want to continue to fund this work. As Noel said, this is a long-term effort, so we do understand that this home repair process will take long. And so we do want to be able to maximize all additional capacity to support our residents, whatever we can to get more homes back online.
Thanks. Then I have one last question, I think, for Jim. Talking about, being slow, you mentioned how once something passes ENA, it's 30 to 60 days to get an executed contract, and this may actually be a comptroller question. I mean, we've been having special ENA meetings every other week to push things through as quickly as possible. It's 166 days post-tornado. And still, we're seeing that a significant amount of money has not actually made it out to the community. It seems like that 30 to 60 days isn't actually happening, or there's a breakdown somewhere else. I'm trying to figure out where the breakdown is in the problem, to the fact that we allocated a bill back in June, and this money is still not completely deployed out to the community.
To date, the average has been 30 to 60 days, and that is something that we focus on and really accelerate. It's doable. And the comptroller's department's been a great partner in this, and they've been super helpful. It's doable.
What is the ideal for where you think we can get to?
I think we can get to 2 to 4 weeks. So on the cost recovery one, for example, we went through special ENA. Once we selected, we went through the special selection committee. Once we selected a firm, there was a 5-day gap between that selection and the special ENA. The city councilor's department worked with the firm that we had selected and had the contract drafted and ready to go. It just didn't, from there, it just kind of fell by. I don't have a good answer.
Okay.
But it's a focus.
And just to be clear, if we ever need to schedule more ENA meetings because every other week isn't enough,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that all members of ENA would be willing to do that. These meetings are pretty quick, and we know the importance of getting these contracts moving.
Okay, thank you. This is going to be a major focus for us, though.
Okay. No further questions?
All right, thank you, guys. We're going to be efficient with this. Next, we'll have the comptroller office have their representatives come up. Please just state your name, title, and appreciate the handout to kind of talk about the comptroller's role in contracts when it comes to the 30 million.
Yeah, sure. My name is Jason Fletcher. I'm the Deputy Comptroller for the Comptroller's Office. Thanks for having us here tonight.
Thanks for coming.
Also have, do you want to, Donnice and
Mackenzie Looney, Executive Assistant.
So thanks for having us tonight. Good afternoon, members of the board. I have a statement that I'm going to read because we play a much smaller role in this, but very important. So I don't have a presentation for you guys to look at. So good afternoon, members of the Budget Committee. Thank you for inviting us to discuss and answer questions regarding the City Tornado Recovery Program. With the Mayor's Office spearheading the recovery effort work along with our support. We want to thank them for their hard work and the presentation that they put together. For your review, because of that limited scope, but very important responsibility that we play, we provided the contract review process workflow as well as the tornado recovery budget and contract law. These materials outline the contracting process and each department's recovery budget, along with their expenditures to date from the moment of the tornado to date, what each department has expended and what funds remain. So that was provided prior to the meeting so that you guys have that and you guys can ask some questions. So our office remains committed to the responsible management and continue to support the city's recovery efforts. Our role largely is regarding requisitions, purchase orders, invoices, the processing of invoices, and getting checks out the door. One of the smaller roles, well, one of the most important roles we play, although it's probably smaller in nature, is the contracting process. Invoices, as you can imagine, are much more voluminous. So we get a ton of invoices that come through. The contract process, we're one in line of many for the final signature of the comptroller herself. So we do play a role in that, of course, very important role in that. But the requisition, purchase order, and invoice process, as well as getting the checks out the door to the contractors, that's the most voluminous role that we play. And then, of course, we're always available to collaborate with the mayor's office, which we do often. So yeah, just open it up to questions if you guys have any.
Thank you. Vice Chair Browning?
No questions, thank you.
Alderwoman Tanya?
I don't have any questions for you all. I just do want to say that I look forward to some of our procurement conversations and working together on that legislation to help with the process.
Alderman Devoti?
No questions.
President Green? Okay. I'd have questions. I don't know if everybody received it, but to be able to paint them a picture of what we received from the Budget Committee to the public. So this is Tornado Response and Recovery RAM's budget, total budget $30 million, which talks about the $30 million that the Board of Aldermen passed. Then we have the PO, which I'm assuming or is about $8.8 million.
Sure.
Of that 30. Does that mean, could you kind of explain what that 8.8 is?
Sure. Yeah, so for everybody in the audience, we submitted, this is the budget from the city's accounting system. So the first column is actually by department. So it's listed by department. There are 4, we call them cost centers. There are 4 departments largely that have received the $30 million to spend. Within that, you'll see the programs in which we were asked to set up. So for instance, disaster case management or disaster operational support and the rest. So it's all broken down. The total budget column is the full $30 million by department and program. The obligation column is what we currently have under contract. So obligation or purchase order means we've received a contract, requisition was put in place, they gave us a contract, we reviewed it, the comptroller signed it, then it turns into a purchase order and obligates the city to spend those funds.
Gotcha. If we could pause on that. So what's the difference when Jim is saying we've obligated or deployed 23 point something million, and then the...
Sure, yeah, the 16, so right now there's $16 million RAMS money contracts, roughly $16 million of RAMS money. Then the numbers that the mayor's office is discussing is more inclusive because it includes CDBG. And so this presentation or this discussion tonight, it was my understanding that we were talking RAMS money specifically. So the budget I have before you is the RAMS money specifically.
Yeah, and I think with the RAMS money, they're saying on one of the slide shows, it says 23.6 of the 30 has been contracted and deployed with clear plan of remaining funds from RAMS.
Yeah. So they have, during discussions and conversations with the contractors for that amount of money, what our column shows is 8.8 million plus 3 million has already been spent. So that's 12, roughly 12, because it's 8.8 plus 3. And there's 4.5 million that they're in discussion with that have yet to hit the accounting system. So the difference between their numbers and our numbers, or what has actually hit the accounting system, versus the discussions that they're having and bringing folks to the table.
Gotcha.
So they certainly are in those conversations, but we just have yet to get them in the accounting system.
So if we take that 23.6 million and minus that by 8 million,
Yep.
that remaining fund does not have a purchase order, has not, is still somewhere sitting somewhere that is not obligated with a purchase order.
Yeah, there are several $1 million worth of contracts they're in negotiations with, not have a purchase order yet. They have not been signed, and they're still in the review stages.
And what's actually been spent from that 30 on this document that went out the door, purchase order, comptroller signed it, went through the whole process, is 3.3 million.
That's right. Yep.
So-
Out of the $30 million, we have sent checks for is $3 million, roughly $3 million. So.
Okay. No other questions for me? Any one remaining from the committee? All right. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you so much.
Madam President, you are up.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I want to first start just by thanking the mayor and comptroller, as well as Don McKenzie, Jason from the comptroller's office for their work in the recovery process. Also want to make sure that I'm thanking Julian Nix and Jim from the Office of Recovery for working with us to make these government processes, which unfortunately are slow by design, more responsive. And I think from what we've heard from everybody tonight, I won't belabor the point. I think we all know that we need to do better and we need to fix these systems so that everything moves a lot faster than it currently is through city government. Earlier this year, I want to thank this committee. I want to thank members of the Board of Aldermen for doing your job by creating the Tornado Relief and Recovering Fund. And since then, since it left the board, my job as an ENA member has been to make sure that those funds reach organizations and residents who are recovering from the May 16th tornado. In addition to reviewing and voting on contracts through ENA, my office also sits on dozens of selection committees each week to contract professional services for the recovery process. My policy director, Christina Garamindia, as well as my chief of staff, Jay Nelson, have been spending countless hours reviewing expenditures, interviewing vendors, making recommendations to the Office of Recovery, all on top of their pre-existing jobs and the regular allocations and PSAs that they sit on. In those conversations, I've directed my office to advocate for what we're hearing from grassroots organizations. My chief of staff, Jay, is here this evening. I've had staff at each of these meetings to make sure that what we hear here is being made into those negotiations around contracts. In those, to date, ENA has approved expenditures for roughly $15.7 million of the $30 million that was authorized in Board Bill 30. And as ENA, we also have set up bi-weekly meetings. Typically, ENA meets on a monthly basis. We've been setting up meetings that happen every other week so that as a PSA occurs, as a recommendation is made, we can more quickly get it through ENA and over to the comptroller's desk. But I also recognize that for anybody who is waiting for their home to rebuild, who is looking for a place to live, we're not doing enough and we're not moving fast enough and we're not delivering the results that they expect and deserve. And so I think in this moment, two things can be true. I think that we have a lot of hardworking staff that is putting us on track to recover. And I also think that the city can and should do more to reform our processes so that these move faster. I want to close just by saying that as we move from crisis response to stabilization to recovery into eventually rebuilding, residents' needs are going to change. And that's why my office is in constant dialogue with community leaders, many who are here tonight, the Office of Recovery, and my colleagues on E&A. And as president of the board, I will continue to exercise my oversight authority to carefully review these contracts, make sure that the decisions we make reflect what we're hearing from residents, and work with the board, the community, comptroller's office, mayor's office, to see how we can refine these processes to make them move faster. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Madam President. Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you, President Green. Really appreciate the attention that you're paying to this and the ways that you're looking at how can we speed up procurement, how can we meet immediate needs. I don't have any questions for you, just as much as I want to express my appreciation to you and every member of this committee and this board to respond as fast as we can. Legislative branches are not usually equipped to move quickly, and this city is especially not equipped to move quickly. This is the role of the federal government, that they should have been prepared, and we learned lessons from Katrina over 20 years ago now, and then we just forgot all those lessons, and now we're experiencing it all over again. My hope is that this can be a lesson for the future, that we can improve this process, because St. Louis should be a warning to the rest of the country at this point of the failure of this government, the callous cruelty of this government as they are about to pause SNAP benefits. And even our state government, as helpful as they've been, not even as helpful as they need to be, because this is a more than $1 billion disaster. And so I think we have a lot of work ahead of us, but I appreciate the spirit in which everybody is working together, and I hope that we can continue to do so.
Thanks.
Alderwoman Tanya.
I just wanted to thank you for your leadership on this. I have learned so much more about the procurement processes and how extremely antiquated and outdated they are. And when I really had to see just how much of your staff, of the mayor's staff, the comptroller staff have to spend their times on these mini PSA processes and all of the RFPs and all those things, that is so meticulous that I really just want to thank you, especially on the office, being very open to procurement conversations and for really being willing to streamline a process. I know you were honestly very supportive before the tornado. We were kind of having these conversations, but I think now there's just a will for it. And so I thank you and your staff for just their patience of sitting through the mini calls, and also to the person in the comptroller's office for doing that work until we're able to, improve the process.
Yeah. I want to make sure I thank you too for digging in on this topic. In the grand scheme of fun things to take up at the Board of Aldermen, procurement practices isn't always at the top of the list. But I appreciate the willingness to kind of dig in and figure out how we can make this work better.
Alderman Devotie.
President Green, first, thank you to you and Mr. Nelson and Ms. Garmendia for all of your work over the last handful of months of directing HERD. My observation is often the Board of Aldermen is like trying to collect a bunch of cats and push them in the right direction. And your leadership and direction has been very much appreciated throughout this process. I did hear you talk in terms of various priorities from your standpoint, and you mentioned the notion of rebuild. And of course, that's a concept that I think I know all of us are thinking about. The rebuilding of homes. It does strike me with where we stand now with extremely limited funds, hearing the scope of the task ahead of us, the bigger question of prioritizing what those issues are. To the extent that you're able to push and prod to get data about what the needs of our North Side's neighbors are. And I think we heard from Mr. Nix last month when we met that data was being collected. And I was hoping to hear some of that data tonight, and I didn't hear any data. But it seems to me that the starting point of any discussion is, what are the needs of the community? What are the needs of the folks in the tornado-affected zone, the storm zone? And it's very difficult to prioritize about where we go from here if we don't know what the needs are. And I know these folks are going to speak to us tonight from their observations, but I think it really would behoove us moving forward, to the extent you're able to, again, give a healthy push to get data and information that we were told last month was being gathered so that we can actually see it. So again, thank you for your effort.
Thank you. That is completely heard, and I share that. Hopeful that since case management just started to get stood up earlier this month, that data will be forthcoming, because I share in that concern too. We're operating off of a lot of old data and some assumptions at the moment, but obviously additional funds are going to be needed to address the needs, but we need to have some firm dollar amounts on what that's going to be.
Thank you, Alderman Devotee. I also ditto everything you said, not about data, but herding cats at the Board, Alderman. It's a lot. But in seriousness, President Green, thank you. And also want to thank the Offices of Recovery, the Comptroller. You know, I'm not trying to look like the bad guy by asking hard questions, but I think this is a serious topic. And as you mentioned, we definitely need to get this right. What happened in North St. Louis is the tornado, but let's not act like North St. Louis has been left behind for a very long time. And this is the moment for the city to actually show that, you know, we care and that we're moving quickly and doing things historically that we haven't, which I know this board has stepped up to pass various pieces of legislation. I think maybe more is coming down the line in a record time, but and it sounds like Alderwoman Saunier is working on legislation to fix this slow process, because, you know, $3 million out of $30 million, when it takes 30 to 60 days, it's nothing that I can go back to anybody in this room or in my ward to say is acceptable. And I'm not even going to say it is, because it's not. But I know there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes that we are trying to work to move forward to improve that. And I want to appreciate you, your team, your office, for all the work that you guys are doing on this.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we will go to community or public comment. Everyone will have 3 minutes. When you come up, please state your first and last name and ward you reside in, if you don't live in the city, municipality, in the county that you live in, because we all want St. Louis. Madam Clerk, when you're ready.
Let's swear people in.
Yes, everybody that's testifying, could you raise your hand?
And there are some people online.
Okay, for the ones online, can you turn your camera on, please? If you're testifying and you turned your camera on, just raise your hand on the computer screen. And everyone in the room got their hand up. Do you all swear to tell the truth, none but the truth? That's what you all say, I do. Okay. And the one signing in right now, I just seen you sign in. I'm gonna make sure I'm just messing with her. Okay, Madam Clerk, you can start. Will you also keep the 3-minute time, please? And if need be, I could help you. Our clerks be working overtime over here.
The first speaker is Topher Zudlik.
Again, everyone come up, just state your first, last name, ward, and after you say that, your 3 minutes will start.
Hi, I'm Christopher Sudlik. I go by Topher. I'm with the PSL out of North County. I live in Woods, and I've been organizing in the Fountain Park area. When a system is not doing what we are told it should, we have to take a closer look at that system. So for the recovery office, Julian Nix comes from a background in corporate consulting, helping utilities boost their profits, the infamous Bain & Company specifically. Karen Branding was over SeaWorld during the events of the documentary Blackfish and leading up to those events. Patrick Brown has been in the revolving door between business and government, especially for Ameren, for years. Dustin Allison was the VP of Arch to Park that removed and replaced the downtown populations for the business class's interest in this city. Millicent Borishade was a longtime proponent of replacing public schools with charter schools and has been fired and removed from the office already. This mass closure of public schools, the ramp up of pressure tactics like rapid power disconnections by Ameren, and the push to build data centers and chemical plants, the lack of release of aid where it is needed, and the delays, denials, and dismissals of what the actual community leaders in the recovery office demand, while funneling money to groups like Tetra Tech that does not specialize in debris removal, it specializes in complicated engineering consulting for high power and high water use scenarios like building data centers. This simply does not look like simple neglect. What it looks like is a deliberate, coordinated plan to pressure the population of North City to leave for the profit of Cara Spencer's property developing campaign donors like Clayco. If we want accountability, it's not going to come from listening to Julian's excuses or those of his high-power Big Four consultant lackeys. It's not going to come from agencies staffed with millionaires backing those in the highest offices. It's not going to come from agencies staffed by their lackeys. It's going to come from an open and honest system. That honesty is not in the room with us today. This is the equivalent of a kangaroo court, where you have all already decided the outcome. That's unfair, it's unjust, and St. Louis deserves better. For once in this city's life, we demand, put people over profit.
Next speaker is Ryan. I can't pronounce the last name.
Hi, my name is Ryan Diebel. I am also a member of the PSL. I've been organizing the Fountain Park area. The city's response to the tornado has been wildly inadequate. The north side was already suffering the effects of redlining and historical neglect, and a tornado has made it much worse. Many thousands of people have been displaced, and if things continue as they have, many more will follow. There is a warehouse with tools, supplies, and food, much of which is close to expiring, that the city has had, at least since May. There are also plans to build a job training center in December called Monarch in that warehouse and the surrounding property. To my knowledge, there is no plan to deal with the supplies other than just trashing it. The city has been drip feeding these supplies to orgs doing disaster relief, but the reality is that St. Louis must be flooded with aid. I believe that this is a deliberate attempt to starve North St. Louis and continue the displacement of people so that wealthy developers can come in and buy up property, build high-cost apartments and housing, and building things with the sole purpose of putting money in their pockets. Many of the people who would benefit from this are on the recovery office, overseeing the aid efforts of the city. The people of St. Louis will not stand for this. We will work and organize until it is done. Until the gentrification ceases and until the rights and dignity of all people are respected. The people have the power and the people will win.
Casey Fowler online.
Yeah, I'm Casey Fowler Finn, Ward 6. I've been actually helping out with the Amazing People's Response and have visited numerous homes in North and West St. Louis and talked to many of those in the impacted areas. I want to point out that those older people who have been at these budget meetings the last few months, it seems like your hearts are in the right place, and I'm happy to hear you guys pushing for stuff, but many of the older people, including my own, have been absent, which is really concerning. Because as people highlight the details of a paltry 4 homes that have been repaired and the pitiful 3 to 4 million that has been spent compared to 1 to 2 billion in damage, asking for patience, providing background and reasons for why we haven't actually spent any notable amount of money, I want to remind you all that we are literally talking about people's lives, and people are literally going to die very soon as the cold hits and their houses are getting moldy and they're getting breathing unhealthy air. We are 166 days into this disaster, and I'm saying into because we are still in a disaster. People in the north are living this every single day, and barely any money has actually been spent helping folks with this major housing crisis. My next point is I want to urge the city to allocate all of the RAM settlement money And additionally, the $100 million from housing funds not covered by FEMA that the state of Missouri is providing to North St. Louis. This is not just about fixing tornado damage. It starts to make up for the decades of intentional neglect that has made this disaster as big as it is. We have a choice about how history is going to actually reflect on this. We can either take care of our citizens, especially those that have a difficult time navigating the system, or we can continue the same continued negligence and disenfranchisement of the North. I think Topher pointed out, we are shoving people out of the North, and it is just heinous. We are losing people whose families have been here for generations to the counties. And without North St. Louis is not a city I'm proud to live in. I also want the city to think about why we are spending money anywhere else in the city while people are literally going to die from exposure. I want you guys to halt all non-essential projects and redistribute the money to housing relief. I don't want to see money being spent on a bike path in South St. Louis when people have tarps on their homes that trap carbon monoxide in their homes and mold grows on their walls and rain falls into their bedrooms. Finally, I just want to reflect President Green's thoughts and Alderman Devote's question. How have you decided how and where the money's being spent? We have residents that they said what they needed. And have you listened to them? What conversations you've had? Have you talked to the grassroots organizations on the front line? Because they actually have the data. They've been collecting the data since day one, and they know what's needed, and the city needs to listen. Thank you.
Michael McLemore.
Good evening, Michael McLemore, 12th Ward. I just want to think back to January when a alderwoman turned mayor would step outside her house every morning to count how many days she was iced in. I think it got up to about 2 weeks. Day 14, still got ice on the ground. It's been almost 170 days since the tornado. I also want to refer back to the September 30th HUD's meeting when Director Noel Pfeffer in his presentation stated that the current housing crisis is upwards of almost $500 million, with around $169 million needed immediately just to get through the winter. And I say that to say more focus has to be on providing warm shelter and food for these impacted people. The most promising thing I think I heard through this entire hearing so far is that less a priority has been set on simply debris removal. And we heard, I think earlier this week at the Civic Leaders Committee meeting that a big portion of the debris removal process was for optics, for redevelopment in that area. So my biggest question from that meeting was, who are we developing or removing these debris for when the people who live in that area are sleeping in their cars? I read this morning that there were, and I'm gonna talk about housing. I know the pamphlet said we're not talking about housing, but there were plans to open up shelters that would fit, roughly 1,000 folks in them. That sounds more like a refugee camp than actual housing for anybody. It is for these reasons that I recommend that we consider allocating all of the RAMS money to the impacted people of North St. Louis. That's all I have. Thank you.
Next speaker is Elsa Frazier. Online.
Hi, my name is Isla Frazier and I live in the 10th Ward. It's been cold and rainy lately, and every time I hear the wind or the rain hit my roof, I think about the over 5,000 homes in North St. Louis that are covered in tarps instead of roofs. 5 months after the May tornado, families are still wondering when the city will act up. In the meantime, it's been North St. Louis residents and grassroots organizations who have stepped up, checking in on families and meeting their needs as they arise. The community has shown incredible strength, but a devastation this big requires a big investment from the city. Right now, St. Louis is sitting on more than $250 million from the RAM settlement, money that could be putting people back in homes, reopening libraries, and helping neighborhoods rebuild. Instead, much of it is not in the community, with some routed through United Way or other nonprofits before it even reaches residents, if at all. Every minute the city delays is another minute a family continues to suffer without the support that they desperately need. I'd also like to highlight that during tonight's presentation, the focus was mostly on debris removal and infrastructure, which is important, but neighbors are also asking for libraries to reopen, nutrition programs to be funded, and basic needs for families. We need to invest directly in North St. Louis residents to ensure that St. Louis history of disinvestment and gentrification does not repeat itself. I urge you all to allocate all of the RAMS money to North St. Louis and to get the current allocations into residents' hands now. Thank you.
Antonia DeGraff.
Thank you. My name is Antonia DeGraff. I actually am not a resident of St. Louis. I live in Glen Carbon, across the river. I was born in Creve Coeur. My sister is a librarian over at Central Library. My mom's a public school teacher, and this is my community. Actually, in the words of the mayor herself, which I think she said it best, city government must meet the basic needs of residents and what they expect and deserve. When the city fails to meet the needs of the people who live, work, and play here, we fall short. That's what she said. And I think we have fallen short. I think the city has fallen short. That can be reflected by the fact that most people aren't even here today, the mayor herself, to speak to this. The core values of this mayoralship has been bravery, visionary thinking, tenacity, and determination, but I have not seen that in any of the allocation, given that 3 of the 30 million is the only thing that has hit the ground. It's absolutely terrifying to know what residents are going to face, especially after November 1st. And in the words of the vice chair, the government is cruel. The state government, I would argue, is cruel, but I would urge everyone here not to continue that cruelty. If we have the power and ability to make this happen as constituents, as government members, then we need to do it. I really don't tolerate any form of bureaucratic mess that has gotten in the way of families having access to food and safe shelter so that children can go to sleep at night. I've heard from a lot of people that are impacted, as I'm sure everyone here has, and I am grateful for this opportunity. I'm grateful for everything that has been done, but respectfully, it's not enough. And I urge that everybody focus on ways in which we can allocate the entirety of the RAMS fund, as well as, to speak to Topher said earlier, completely halt any additional non-essential projects, because economic development is useless and completely not possible if the residents of North City don't have a home. They're not going to have money to spend. They're not going to have businesses to develop, which is exactly what the mayor ran on and is exactly what the committee looks for, right? Business development in the North. That's not going to happen. And I really, really, really don't want to see my neighbors get pushed out because a number of people in this room are aware of projects and money being spent, yet people don't have a roof. Thank you.
Cynthia Jordan.
Good evening. Chairman Aldridge, Madam President, State Representative Kimberly Ann Collins. All of you represent the parts of government that make us proud as citizens. And I just want to start with a very favorite quote of mine that motivates me as a banker. And I hope that it will motivate you as well. The quote was by author Tempest Terry Williams, and she said, "The eyes of the future are looking back at us, praying that we see beyond our own time." And I'm not going to criticize the city of St. Louis because the Board of Aldermen has done what you all can do. But I will be critical of Mayor Spencer and Comptroller Behringer because they have not done enough. And so I don't make it no secret that I was pro Tashara Jones, and a good friend of mine was Neil Richardson, because I've worked with them and I've seen what they have been able to do. But since they're no longer in office, here we are, and we have a moment that we have to step up to. So let me begin with my recommendations and suggestions, and I forgot to say that I am a resident of St. Louis County, West St. Louis County, but born and raised in the city of St. Louis. I urge the city of St. Louis to allocate all of the RAM settlement money to go to North St. Louis City to ensure that there is not only recovery, but also rebuilding. And I would also urge that the available $17 million that's currently sitting in the pot that we saw on the cash statement go to the residents that are living in tents, sleeping in cars, and also risking their lives, still staying in structurally damaged homes. And I understand now there's concern about carbon monoxide. People have noticed coughs that are associated with the May 16th tornado simply because we're not moving or doing enough. I also would like to see money be allocated to Action St. Louis. Kayla did not ask me to say that, neither did Ohan suggest that, but I think it's disingenuous and it's an injustice. When we see other nonprofits being funded, being allocated and reimbursed, and Action St. Louis is not getting a dime.
Ms. Jordan, that's your time.
Okay. All of the money needs to go to North St. Louis, and I will start the conversation in St. Louis County. We need to get behind the city as well. This is a regional issue that we can no longer afford to sit out. Thank you.
Julia Allen online.
Ms. Allen, are you on mute?
I'm here.
All right, Ms. Allen, do you swear to, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, Ms. Allen, just state your first and last name and the ward you reside in.
My name is Julia Allen, and I stay in the 12th Ward. And I'm here once again to just state that all of the RAMS money, the $250,000 that's left, needs to go to North St. Louis. I've been here 75 years. The city has never invested in North St. Louis. Now is the time for the city to step up. And I think Michael mentioned about in the article in the newspaper, 500 people in a shelter is terrible. It reminded me when I saw that, the first thing I thought about was Katrina and all of those people in the Superdome. You can't herd people like that. It just doesn't make good sense. It's not a humanitarian thing that you're gonna do to herd all those people in 500 to 1,000. The other thing is that this is the right time And this is the time that the region can show to the rest of the country that they care about all of their citizens, every last one of them. How do you think people feel when they see on the news that Legal Services of Eastern Missouri is helping Dutchtown to fix houses with nonprofits and stuff? None of those nonprofits have stepped up in North City. I'm just encouraging the Board of Aldermen to send all of the Rams money and any other money that they have to North St. Louis, because it's the right thing to do and everybody knows it. Thank you.
Tracy Beard.
Hi, my name is Tracy Bird, and I live in Webster. And I wanted to reiterate my support for. I think of money as sort of like concentrated sunshine. It is a real thing. We say a lot of words. It's very difficult to do things that are real, and I think people are asking for something that's real. I wanted to support them in something that's real, and I feel like these requests are reasonable. The maps, they all look alike. We all know the long history of this. This is the most recent and, most obvious version, the most natural disaster version, but we've had man-made disasters, for decades that have led to this. And I am hopeful that we have an opportunity to have a man-made solution. So I also am in support of the money going to support North St. Louis. Thank you very much.
Steve Kroc.
My name's Steve Kroc. I'm from Manchester, out in the county. With the previous comment about being out in the county, I really feel like that we are neighbors, and I hope that we can have greater cooperation, communication, and working together going forward. That we treat each other like neighbors. I want to thank you all for all the work that you've done from the offices in the city. And I'm getting a bit more of understanding of the complexity and scope of what it takes to enact this recovery. How can we process more quickly to expedite getting contractors out into the neighborhood? The recovery office was talking about they could cut their time down to 2 to 4 weeks. It sounds like comptroller's office has lots of forms and lots of processing to go through. I would just hope that we're continuing to look at ways that we can become more efficient to be able to get the money out to where the people need it, to get contractors on in the neighborhoods. That's what's going to make things happen. There was a mention of the delinquent contractors that, this is something that we need. We need people in those neighborhoods that can fix things. Maybe something can be done. Especially whoever we have, if they're delinquent, can they be, paying 10% of what their payment is towards those delinquent taxes? Win-win. Just to get them out there as soon as we can, get them people working. Regarding the money, I want to see us preserve the historic neighborhoods and homes that have been damaged, and that we don't have another Mill Creek. Thank you.
Art Clemens.
Good evening. My name's Art Clemens. I live in the 11th Ward now, but in 2020, I lived in the 8th Ward for alderman, but I didn't get on the ballot. I served on the general staff of the 101st Airborne Division in Vietnam, and part of my job was to work on the budget of the division. It's my observation about the Ram settlement money that it's about $80 million short on because of the total incompetence of the St. Louis City Attorney Civil Division. And let me go into that. First of all, they the firm that got the money was Dowd and Bennett, and they got their about $275 million, which is over a third of the amount of the settlement. The excuse me. The reason all right, there's a statute on the books. It's MRS 34-375, which states that a group of attorneys, private attorneys, when they are working on a settlement or working on a case with the state, they're limited to 2% of the budget of the amount of the settlement. Now, the city is not the state, but it's my position that any
You can take your time.
I'm not very good at presenting my case here, but I do have a copy of a motion to reduce the legal fees that I drew up. And I'm sorry I'm so tongue-tied here today. But anyway,
Mr. Clemens, that's your time.
all right.
Mr. Clemens, you can email that to BOA clerk.
I want to hand it to somebody in person.
You can hand it to the clerk over here. Sure.
Anyway, there are several good reasons why a motion to reduce legal fees is a standard motion. There's several reasons why the city should file it and try to recover that money.
Our next speaker is Armand Walker.
Hello, everyone. My name is Armand Walker. I am with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I'm a lifelong resident of St. Louis, and I am currently a member of Ward 2. I'm going to go off script a little bit, so please give me some grace if I go over by a few seconds. There is a bit of a debate about whether or not we have the funds. I think we should ask the mayor's friends at Clayco. If you look up, it is a privately owned company, but you can see that they are estimated to be about $5.8 billion net worth. And we should be pressuring these giant corporations to use the wealth that working class people have generated for them to come help those same people recover after this devastating tornado. Just think about how much wealth we're sending downtown and funding policing and other things like that that could be saving lives right now in North City. These are things that you can be actively advocating for, fighting for, pressuring the mayor, pressuring everyone that you know and that you have control over, have influence over in your office. And let's also not allow people to build, private companies to build a $1.5 billion data center while North City is starving, as several other people have pointed out. And also want to go back to what Casey Fowler said very well, that we should definitely be halting all non-essential building projects. As stated, I'm in Ward 2 on the south side. I definitely agree with that. There should be no bike paths being built while people are starving in North City. And Thomas Oldenburg, my ward member, I hope that you're listening. So I would love to believe that the city is doing everything that it can, as it often states, but certain facts suggest otherwise. In September, STLPR reported that Ameren disconnected over 14,000 households the month prior. This board put forth a non-binding resolution to pressure Ameren to pause disconnections. But what became of that resolution? If the best that the city can do is beg Big Bad Ameren to stop disconnecting people's electricity after a devastating tornado, then we have a broken and ineffective system. People want their representatives to protect them from giant corporations, and yet we see Ameren reps like Patrick Brown, who Topher mentioned earlier, selected to be part of the Mayor's Recovery Office Advisory Board. Why is that? Meanwhile, the grassroots community orgs that were invited to serve on the advisory board are being ignored. For instance, our fellow organizers at Action St. Louis produced their People's Response Impact Report several months ago. In their survey of over 7,000 households, over 4,000 expressed a need for food and supply drop-off. And in line with this need, the PSL petition with North City United highlights a key demand from the residents to open more distribution centers in affected areas for free water, food, and clothing. I have not seen nearly enough, if anything, to demonstrate how the Recovery Office has met that urgent need. At the same time, I've heard on multiple occasions representatives from this board, Julian Nix, and Mayor Spencer praising Governor Kehoe for his help. Let's remember that this tornado hit in May, but in July, Governor Kehoe was signing bills to set up an entertainment district in downtown. In that same month, he rolled back protections for low-income renters, allowing landlords to discriminate against tenants that receive public assistance, like Section 8 vouchers. I hear the thing going on. If you allow me slightly longer. While in Fountain Park, we worked with families that were facing evictions because their landlords didn't want to conduct the necessary repairs, leaving their space unlivable. As outlined in the North City United petition, we need to see a ban on evictions yesterday. To close, I'll mention that Mayor Spencer attended an event earlier this month hosted by the SLDC to advocate for zoning laws and expedited permit applications and relaxed rules governing historic districts. All things that would make it easier for developers to come in and build everything but affordable housing. Note that SLDC is the same group that provided an $8.2 million tax abatement to build the Israel Chemicals Limited facility on the north side, which will pollute our air while producing chemical weapons for the genocide in Gaza. These are not isolated issues. There are no excuses. We have the money to rebuild right now. We have an army of St. Louisans, as well as people from the county across the river, as you've heard tonight, that are ready to help their neighbors right now. There is no inability, only unwillingness to properly fund and coordinate our resources. Open up all of the RAM settlement money to rebuild North City and fund the people's needs now.
Andrew Rucker. Andrew Rutger.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Rucker, and I'm from the 11th Ward in the Penrose District and new president of the Pot Bag and Speed the Body Mission. I am here to represent my family, friends, and community, and they have some words for me to share with y'all. So before I get started, I must say, Shameen, Rasheen, Alicia, and I know that you're not an older person, but Kimberly Ann, thank you for everything that y'all have done. Also, the others, if it don't apply, let it fly. For 166 days, we have watched the local government parade around like work has been done to help us on the north and west side. But we've watched them play hero with phrasings like boots on the ground when they were just fashion accessories for photo ops. We've watched you create cohorts that, quote, end quote, will better assist the community when we already have cohorts like the People's Response, who already have people in the community that are already talking to the community and know what the people are needing because we are the people. All you need to do is come to the table and sit down with us, genuine heart that's ready to help, and we'll give you a wealth of information on how to help us. We've watched you do so many inflammatory things that we now collectively have gotten into, and excuse my urban colloquialisms again, we've gotten into the what you not gonna do phase of this show. So what you're not gonna do is approve this money that's already not enough, but not give it out to the community. We've been coming out of our own pockets from our own jobs that we work that you already tax us money on just to hear that we are waiting on this agency or that agency. When if you roll with me to Newstead and Ashland, you will see that people are still sleeping in tents with bonfires outside like they're camping in front of their destroyed homes. What you're not gonna do is throw some of these black aldermen and alderwomen under the bus when we know it's only so much that they can do, because it takes 8 to 11 votes all across the board of the city's alders to approve things or put black faces as officials from the mayor's office who give us empty calories when we know it takes the board of estimates and apportionment to approve the city's budgets. And what you're not gonna do is sit on that $250 million and not give it out to what y'all call the North Side. We are hurting and suffering. Winter is not coming. It's here for some of us. All those issues that we have been needing help with for decades have gotten worse. And now there's tornadoes and rain damage. And at this point, we're about to get St. Louis's unstable winter that could possibly give us 12 inches of snow just like last year. At this point, even though we see y'all playing games with our lives, the people are asking for you to do what's right. But it's been 66 days, and I don't know how much longer we're gonna be asking. Thank you for your time.
Melanie Marie.
Oh, man. Good evening. Thank you to all of our leaders who have been doing what they're supposed to do, who have been connecting with us and seeing what the community needs. I'm here today because our community is exhausted. Not just from the tornado itself, but from the city's slow, confusing, and disconnected response. On May 16th, lives were turned upside down. Families lost homes, elders have been displaced, and neighborhoods are stripped bare. 5 months later, what we've gotten from the city is not relief, it's rhetoric. We've seen press releases, plans, and concepts of plans, and consulting contracts, but not direct aid. Minimal actual allocation, and not the kind of urgency this crisis demands. You all have been fumbling through papers, acting like this was a phenomenon. It wasn't a phenomenon. It was a tornado. A disaster that between learning about Katrina and even more locally in Joplin, we should have and could have very well been prepared for. Disasters require decisive, compassionate, coordinated action. Not endless meetings and paper shuffling while people freeze and starve, because that's what's up next. Grassroots organizations, the same ones who are usually underfunded and overlooked, have been doing the work since day one. We've been knocking on doors, feeding families, relocating elders, cleaning up debris, and connecting residents with resources. And contrary to the cameras being gone, and hardly ever seeing a city worker in sight on the community trail, we have not stopped. Meanwhile, the city is paying corporate level organizations to do what the people are already doing, and doing better, faster, and with heart, might I add. Millions of dollars have been planned, but you've spent more on things like hiring full-time case managers than you have providing direct aid to the people who are actually impacted. The city is talking about a shelter and units, but that is not an adequate housing plan. That's optics. People need permanent, dignified, and community-led rebuilding, not a temporary warehouse to survive the winter. And we want a retention plan on bringing people back and keeping people in North City. Cut the red tape. We can keep debating over $30 million like it's some prize. Or we can finally do the right thing by the people and allocate the remaining RAMS fund directly to rebuilding, to stabilization, and impacted homeowners, to renters and to those left behind decades of systemic neglect. It's not the RAMS money, it's the people's money. Let me be clear, I got 30 seconds, I'm sorry. Let me be clear, the people are tired. Comments like rental assistance coming soon, we don't know yet, nearly 6 months later is an atrocity. And you are solidifying the fact that we would be fools to trust that this administration will ever act in our best interest. If the city refuses to move with the urgency that this moment requires, then we, the people, will move it ourselves, by petition, by policy, and by presence. We don't want sympathy. Keep the shout outs. We want progress. We don't need more plans. We need to see tangible deadlines and strategies and direct action for the people who've lost everything. Until North City is whole, move the goddamn money.
Kelly McGowan.
Good evening, all. My name is Kelly McGowan. I'm a resident of the 9th Ward and the founder and executive director of Transform 314. Our mission is to educate, engage, and empower Black St. Louisans to drive the policy changes needed at the local level to create thriving communities. We want our city to win, which means we need to work together to make this happen. Part of that means that the city needs to be a better partner to those that live here. So what does a city being a better partner look like in practice? First and foremost, utilize this meeting not as a checkbox, but leverage it as an opportunity to incorporate residents' feedback into the city's tornado relief and recovery efforts. To do this, the public should be informed at least 1 week in advance so we are aware and can participate. In addition, providing the presentation and other items to be discussed should also be made publicly available at least 1 week in advance. This would allow residents the opportunity to authentically engage and, resulting in these meetings, helping to guide the city's effort. Consideration should be made to have these meetings in the community, specifically in the tornado-impacted area. If this meeting is more than a checkbox, the city must do better than the bare minimum in these regards. Going beyond these meetings, these updates should be incorporated into broader communications efforts so everyone knows what's going on. The effort that is needed must extend well beyond what was outlined in the ordinance establishing the Tornado Relief and Recovery Fund. I believe that the residents of the city of St. Louis, especially those living on the north and west sides, are well worth going above that bare minimum effort. In going beyond that bare minimum, can there be a tracker developed similar to what the prior administration did regarding the ARPA dollars so we can see what has actually been spent much easier? This would support residents' engagement and involvement throughout this entire process. It will also help with what is vital in this effort, transparency. To conclude, we all want our city to win. There are folks in this room and online that are willing to do our part. However, the city does not provide us that opportunity to do so. The city cannot win if it ain't right within and must go beyond the bare minimum to do right by the most important players involved, the people of the city of St. Louis. Thank you.
Chris Wilcox.
Good evening. My name is Chris Wilcox. I live in the 14th Ward. As a resident of the 14th Ward, I live in the part that's not in North City, but I want to echo all the speakers that came here before me in saying that all of the Rams settlement money should go to North City. It's a check that's long past due, and all of the neglect that's happened with the North since decades. It's also an unhappy accident that the last budget went through right when the tornado hit. We were all out doing recovery on the day that we were supposed to, maybe talking about the city's priorities in the budget. It's very evident, even before the tornado, that those priorities were not adequate for the city. That is all the more so the case now, after a tornado hit through the part of the city that could least afford it and is the least supported by the city as its responsibility. It's also unfortunately the case that there is an alignment where if the city continues to fail and people leave and the people look elsewhere, that is fewer people to displace when the real estate investors come along and decide they want to make this, they want to have the right optics so that these real estate investors come in and buy it all up and displace the people there. That can't be allowed to happen. And part of that has to be that the city has to actually fulfill its responsibility in meeting people's basic needs. I also want to echo that, not a single unessential project should go forward, not one more tax abatement or subsidy for any corporation until the North City is made whole and and people's basic needs are taken care of. It's no secret that the city has not met its obligations toward our unhoused community up until now. We seem to have fewer and fewer resources every single year. That has to change, especially now that there's so many more people. Last time we went out to canvass in Fountain Park, I saw a tent pitched in someone's front yard. People are camping in homes that were theirs just before May. So this needs to be the number one priority, and we're not going to allow the business interests to take advantage of people who have been displaced, and it's displaced and neglected by the city's failures. Thank you.
Dallas Adams.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the Budget Committee for holding this hearing. My name is Dallas Adams. I am a proud resident of the 3rd Ward in the side of St. Louis. I am here speaking as my perspective as a disaster case supervisor who is helping to get seniors recovered and stable after the tornado. I am not speaking on behalf of any agency. You need to make that caveat. I want to speak to Alderman Devote's call for data. I look forward to being able to give that data. Data is what I do day in and day out as the supervisor. What I can give you without prior authorization is that we are seeing, from the senior perspective, the needs of temporary housing assistance, loss of generational homes, and impacted seniors with no income and no pathway forward. For example, we are working with somebody who is almost 90 years old, a man who has had his home for 30 years. It has no roof. It has no walls. He refuses to leave, and there is nowhere for him to go because there is nowhere for him to have a home with $0 in income. Those are the people that are depending on our legislative body to act quickly and to act now before they freeze in their homes and they die. People will die en masse this winter if we do not act quicker than the legislative body and our processes allow us to. We are seeing an uptick in senior centers across the city for people who are unhoused, walking in looking for food and assistance since the summertime. We've had a housing problem for a very long time. I'm sure I do not have to explain that to this legislative body. And I do remember a few years ago an opportunity for us to actually move some legislation forward to help us open more shelters, to avoid emergencies like this, where we have to put 500 to 1,000 people into a warehouse that we still haven't identified yet. I remember because I testified and was heartbroken to see that legislation fail by just one vote. The time to prepare for an emergency is before an emergency happens, but the next best time is while we are in the emergency. My team and I really appreciate Director Noel Pfeffer's work. We support his direction, but I call on this body to allocate more funds for winter shelter, short-term hotel stays, for people with functional needs until they can be housed, because let's be clear, again, a 500-bed shelter is never the answer, and it does not work for people who have mobility disabilities. We need rental assistance, and we need every single dollar to go towards rebuilding North and West St. Louis. If this happened anywhere else in the city, and I did hear Ms. Allen call out Dutchtown, which I am proud to call home. If this happened anywhere else in the city, we likely would not be moving this slow and without as much diligence and care. Nobody in this body is directly responsible for the action of the intentional neglect and disinvestment in the north side of St. Louis, but we inherit the sins of our father. And so I expect the best from this Board of Aldermen, from our Board of ENA, to be able to make right the historical sins of the city of St. Louis. And if it took a natural disaster to do it, then God be so. Thank you for your time tonight.
Our final speaker is Wayne Phillips.
Good evening. My name is Wayne Phillips. I am from the almighty North Side. I live in 14th Ward, which is currently ran by Rasheen Aldridge. I just wrote this, so pardon me. I'm not the greatest at writing stuff and having to perform it right after. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Board of Aldermen. Before I go into my statement, first, let me congratulate President Megan Green on being with child. I truly and seriously wish you a happy and healthy pregnancy. That being said, I don't exactly have a statement more than I have questions. The tornado ran through the north side and damaged a little bit over or under 5,000 buildings. One of my questions, if it can be answered, is that how many of those 5,000 buildings are owned by the LRA? The reason I ask that is because, for those who are unaware, the LRA is ran and owned by STL City. For any of us who's lived in St. Louis City and grown up here, we know a gang of these buildings was in terrible condition before the tornado hit, and we know the city's answer to most of it is to just tear them down. That being said, I bring that up because I personally feel those buildings should not be including anything for money being allocated to them. If they're not on the tax payroll, if nobody lives in them, nobody gains any benefit from them, they should just be stricken from the record and touched on at a later date. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but of the $250 million of Rams money, I believe I read 40 million of the principal was allocated to upgrading the city's water infrastructure. If I also remember correctly, the Board of Aldermen had 3 separate sessions for the Rams money, and that was the one thing that you all agreed on. By my math, that leaves 210 million still on the table. I'm aware that the city is trying to hold on to said money to let it build interest so it could be a pot that the city can reach into when it needs, but that money can build a solid amount of homes, especially if we taking LRA buildings out of the equation. SLDC runs the Prop NS program. That program stabilizes buildings that are owned by the LRA and can be for sale for affordable housing for those in the city. SLDC spends up to $30,000 for a single family home and $50,000 for a multifamily unit. I believe that same idea should be used for the Rams money to stabilize homes that have been damaged and or destroyed. It's not a lot of money, it's not a perfect idea, but it's an idea nonetheless. The reason I give this idea, because I haven't heard very many good ones from city government, more specifically our mayor's office and the governor's office. Don't get me started on Kehoe. Our mayor harped on a homeless woman dying outside of this very building wintertime of last year. Due to this tornado, the homeless problem has now doubled, if not tripled. Which means, and it's about to be freezing very soon. It's cold outside right now. She's more worried about turning STL into a tourist trap than the citizens who call this city home. I hear that beep, I'm wrapping up right now. She is also able to speak for everything that is a positive photo op for anything pertaining to downtown, but uses Julian as a human shield when it's time to speak on anything tornado related. I could keep going, but I will end this here. Once again, congratulations, President Megan Green, Board of Aldermen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for everybody who came out today to provide that testimony and have been here the whole time, and especially the ones that have been coming since day one of these committee hearings. I will go in order of seniority if any members have any more questions for either the mayor's office, the comptroller office, or the president's office, and I'll start with Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions. I just want to say thank you to the public and everyone who came out and testified today. And thank you to the staff and the city workers who came out today as well to share information. It's important that we receive that. I think you've heard from the community tonight and you understand some of the answers that people are looking for. And I trust that you're going to go back and continue to work on this. So again, just really appreciate the time we've taken to focus on this, and we'll continue to do this until we can rebuild our city and make things right.
Alderwoman Tanya.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to thank everyone who came out tonight to testify. I always look forward to these hearings, and I think it's really important as much as possible. I know it gets daunting month after month, but I think you guys definitely need to keep coming out and keep applying as much pressure. I definitely give my strong, full vocal support that obviously enough has not been done, and a lot of our processes are really extremely slow. And I also do wonder, to echo what Ms. Adams brought up earlier, I do wonder if what this response would look like if it happened in a area, and how that would have played out. And that's something that haunts me. I have family that lives in parts that have been impacted, and I think that's a very thorough conversation. So I really want to thank you all for coming out. I do hope that there'll be some things announced very soon that will indicate some progress in the right direction, but not at all that is going to be a fix-all or end-all be-all or the last of it. But I just do all know that there are definitely some efforts that are happening right now to address some of the emergency winter housing efforts that we know very much exist and are in front of us, and we're looking to kind of make some motion on those things as soon as possible. I also just would like to, I don't know if you guys watch ENA meetings, but I would encourage you to watch them, because obviously a part of the work happens here where we pass the legislation. But if you're curious about who's getting what contracts, how are those contracts selected, a lot of that work happens on a public committee that is being watched, and I've been learning a lot more since watching the procurement process. But I would definitely encourage you all to watch that. I don't know if it might be helpful for you all to get even maybe some kind of ENA report weekly on what the contracts that are being voted on are and how it can look like to do that. But half of the conversation is the building the legislation. The other half is who actually gets the money to move on it. And a lot of that work happens on those ENA and those PSA committees. So I would just also encourage you all to watch that. And I look forward to, obviously this winter is going to be extremely difficult and extremely tough. And I think that because it's October 29th, it is impossible that we're going to be best prepared or that no one's going to be impacted. I don't want to give false expectations, but I certainly think that there's a lot of room for us to do a bit more things and get clearer on our processes as we move forward. And so just thank you all for being here, and please continue to apply pressure to us. I'm saying as an elected official, I don't want you all to think it matters that you come to these hearings. It matters that you email us. It matters that we know that you're watching us. And so I really just want to encourage you all, especially as we walk into it, to keep the pressure up and keep your eyes close on us. Thank you.
Alderman Devoti.
I don't have any questions. I do want to just speak to the folks that are here tonight, especially our North Side neighbors. I'm the South Side alderman of the five of us up here. This last week we had a town hall in the 5th Ward. Whatever you might think of Julian Nix, I invited Mr. Nix to come and speak to folks at my town hall. We probably had about 125 people show up. For those of you that don't know, the 5th Ward stretches from the Hill neighborhood south into or towards Southampton, into Princeton Heights. So that's the general area I represent. I invited Mr. Nix down because, frankly, there is a disconnect between what folks south of, let's say, Interstate 44, I-64, whatever magical line we want to draw, what they think is happening on the north side and what many of you have talked about from day one. And there's a handful of you that we have heard from for all 4 weeks, all 4 Wednesday nights that we've heard here. These kind of sessions, I think, are invaluable for the purpose of reminding all of us in the city of St. Louis that we are better together, that we rise together, but we also fall together. And so I thank you for coming out. I thank you for continuing to bang the drum. You have my attention. I promise you, you do. You may be frustrated, but we are doing what we can to get support throughout the entire city. I promise you that. I wish there was something that we could do to immediately express and meet your need. We promise to work on it. And again, thank you. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for being heard. Your participation is invaluable.
President Green.
I'm going to echo a lot of what has already been said by colleagues tonight, especially Alderwoman Saunier, Alderman Devotie. I appreciate the work that Alderman Devotie and I know Alderwoman Velasquez also has been doing, Alderwoman Saunier on the south side, to make sure that we're educating folks across the city. Because unfortunately, as Alderman Devotie said, when you travel around this city, you do find that there is a disconnect between a lot of folks think we're on the other side of the tornado already. And unfortunately, that is that can sometimes hold back progress. But I also know that we have a Board of Aldermen that I think is really tuned in and engaged for the most part, in recognizing that A, from the beginning, 30 million is not enough. We've known that since day one. 2, we move way too slow. And we can stand up here and talk process all day long and all the rules we're required to go through because of charter or ordinances, whatever. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because we're not getting it out the door fast enough. And that is something I think we've heard from everyone here that we're committed to do, to figure this out, because we have to figure it out. Right? And we shouldn't be 6 months post-disaster and still trying to figure this out. Other thing I just want to highlight for everyone is on the Board of Aldermen page, through my office, we launched something about 2 months ago called Speak Out St. Louis. And it is a citizen platform for residents to put in ideas, and if you get 150 likes on your idea, it automatically gets taken up by the Board of Aldermen as something that my office will research and put out a policy paper on, and if it's feasible, we'll figure out how to move it forward together in partnership with community. But what we've also done is we set up a special part on that website that is dedicated toward tornado recovery. So every time I go into an E&A meeting and we get our contracts that we're approving in E&A, because if you turn into those meetings, most of those meetings are 5 minutes because we take, a vote on one agenda item, but that one agenda item might be approving 5 contracts. So we've been putting all of that into that portal so you can follow along with those documents and see who those contracts are going to, and follow that process at least through E&A. Because my office does, once we vote on it through E&A, my office doesn't follow it, isn't a part of the process after that. But at least we are providing that information up until that. Encourage everybody to put in your tornado relief and recovery ideas, right, into that portal. We want to hear from you. We want to see what's worked and not worked in other cities, right? We know that there's not a lot of great examples of recovery, that most areas, unfortunately, that have recovered from a storm have seen massive displacement and massive gentrification. And we have a task at hand to make sure that that doesn't happen here. But it's going to take coming up with different solutions, because the solutions that have been employed after other disasters have resulted in outcomes that none of us want to see. So we're in a learning curve, but we're in a learning curve with you. And that's one of the reasons we opened up the portals, because we want those ideas. Because we know it often comes better from community, and then we're the policy wonks who have to figure out how to make it actually work within laws and all of that. So please go to the Speak Up St. Louis platform, follow along with those contracts that are going into E&A, follow along. Those PSA meetings are also recorded, and so you can watch, as boring as they are at sometimes, 2-hour-long meetings where folks are discussing contracts. You can tune in and watch those meetings as well, and then give us your ideas, because this isn't going to be over tomorrow. We have a lot of work to do. I think we have a lot of people who are committed to doing that work, but it's going to take all of us together. So thank you, and thank you for so many familiar faces who have been out to all of these hearings. Keep showing up, because we know we're going to get to a point really soon where more money is going to need to be allocated, and we have to make sure that that money represents the needs, wants, desires of the community. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam President. Also, all the members of the committee. Also, I want to thank Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, who's here, has been listening, and I know taking notes. And, I know one of our brothers earlier say people use the boots on the ground in a colloquial way or not, but this alder lady has, she's been outside, she's doing the work, and I'm just glad that you was able to be here today. Also, thank you. I'll be 100. Alderman Devotee has been probably one of the most intentional individuals who do not look like me, and that my ward does not look like his ward. But when there's been conversations about how to rebuild, and having Mr. Nix, or talking about, I know you've been talking about these conversations with folks that just don't get it, which is important. I do want to personally thank you. But more importantly, I also want to thank the community. I appreciate the mayor's office and the comptroller and the president's office, but I do want to thank the community for continuing to show up, for continuing to be honest. I want to thank the ones that have been organizing since May 16th, when government didn't know what to do because we were not ready for it. We wasn't planned, and we're still planning and trying to figure it out. But a lot of individuals that are in this room have continued to do the work, even when government is not probably supporting in the best way as we're figuring it out. So I do want to thank you all for all that you are doing. And I'm going to be honest, as we sit here and we listen, I think somebody said we have a demand, and I totally agree. I believe we need to use more RAMS money. I'm not going to shy from that. And as time goes on and we have those conversations, as the mayor's office even said, or representatives from the mayor's office said, that at some point we're going to need that, we definitely going to need that north. And I think that is a clear charge that has been said from people in this room and people that are not in this room. But it is due to y'all organizing that is going to continue to keep that critical ask at the table and forefront when the time does come. So thank you all for being here, and continue to please show up, watch us, and hold us accountable. With that, oh yeah, I can go ahead and clap. Go ahead, I clap for the chair. With that, Madam Chairwoman, do we have any, or Madam Clerk, do we have any acknowledgement or written testimony?
No.
Any announcements from committee members? Alderwoman Sanye.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to announce my Sister in Services Town Hall. Representative Julianne Collins is having a town hall called Rebuild the Ville on November 8th at 11 a.m. at St. Philip's Lutheran Evangelical Church. Sorry, I just had a skittle, my bad. But the address for that is 2424 Annie Malone, St. Louis, Missouri, 63113. A lot of things will be discussed. I see a lot of partners on here, including St. Louis School District, SLDC, CDA, City of Temple, St. Josephine Bakita Parish, Continuum of Care, Care STL Health, focusing on a number of things, including updates on tornado recovery and state business, and a number of other things. And so I just know, like, obviously we're all here to talk about tornado recovery. We all have seen my good sister on roofs herself, putting tarps in and helping folks get roofs and being on the ground doing that work. So I hope that, you know, anyone who can make it on November 8th at 11 a.m., I hope that you get a chance to attend her town hall, meet some of the folks who are impacted, and meet some of these incredible partners who she and other members of her community are working with to help recover and rebuild North City. Thank you.
Any other announcements? I want to let committee members know I did send an email out. If everyone who's seen it this morning, we will have a budget committee meeting next Wednesday at 10 o'clock to hear from the pay study when it comes to the city of St. Louis, as well as maybe a potential bill. So we will have another meeting next Wednesday at 10 p.m. With that, I would like to like to excuse the alderwoman from the 6th for necessary absence, and I'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by the alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the president. All in favor? 7th. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank y'all for coming.